This week's assignment is about listening to the scholarly testimony within your disciplines. Another way to say this is you're going to be reading about what nerds have found. Researchers engage in observation with very narrow lenses. Think about the microscope. It can focus in on a very small cell and give you a clear understanding of what's in that cell. The more specific and close the observation, the better we can understand it. From an interdisciplinary view, this picture of a cell does not help us understand what a body looks like. To be honest, I don't know if this is from a chicken or a cow or a human, but the granular focused understanding of the parts is extremely important and valuable. That's what you're going to be doing in this phase, looking in at the cellular level. I suppose it would be more accurate to say that you're going to read about others who have looked at the cellular level. What did they look at? What did they find? And how might that help us better understand the animal that we're looking at? The annotated bibliography is an assignment that students love to hate. It's often treated as what I like to call a performance of learning, while its real value and purpose is rarely appreciated. Frankly, I think it's rarely appreciated by faculty, which is why it's often assigned with a sigh. Annotations of sources serve three important purposes. First, it helps a person read a source critically. I know you've done the same thing as I do when I'm reading. I get 10 pages along in The Tale of Two Cities before I realize I haven't been reading at all, but rather dreaming about purchasing a Bailey TS 1040p30 3-horsepower single-phase 10-inch professional cabinet-style table saw. Annotations help us document a careful read of a source. Second, they pull our thoughts out of our heads and give us a chance to see our thinking. Reading my own thoughts on paper is a great way to get them out of my head so I can evaluate my thinking. Third, annotations are designed to help limit the number of times one has to read an article. If I can read it once and annotate it well, I may not have to read the whole thing every time I want some information from it. For this assignment, I'm going to focus upon the first purpose, reading a source carefully and critically. Your annotations are going to have 3 paragraphs, and if you follow my suggestions here, you will end up with excellent annotations for this class and for grad school if you choose to continue your education. We are going to be annotating scholarly sources. When you look for sources in the library, steer away from news articles or books. We're going to be looking for academic peer-reviewed journals. Peer review is a process where nerds provide for the vetting of nerds. It is one of the more time-honored, highest forms of information vetting of knowledge. You, as a student at the university, have access to these discussions. And these are the discussions that you're going to be reading and working from in this project. The first part of an annotation is the citation. Cite your sources using APA. Do not rely on a citation manager to do your citation for you. Check it against APA. You can use online resources to ensure that you're doing it correctly. Citation generators are notoriously terrible. The annotation itself should be in 3 paragraphs: a summary paragraph, an analysis paragraph, and an application paragraph. I've put a checklist for you in resources that will guide you in constructing these paragraphs. Let me start by saying that good annotations are not necessarily good writing. Your sentences may not flow into one another very well. That's perfectly fine. But the 3-paragraph approach is a great way to organize your reading of a source for future use, like a research project. The summary paragraph is just that, a summary of the author's investigation and findings. What were their research questions? What method did they use to observe a phenomenon? What were the findings? What did they report that the findings mean? Use your own words, not the author's, to write this summary. Do not copy and paste because it will be obvious on Turnitin that you did. Instead, think about what they report and then turn it into your own words. This is what we mean by synthesis. The analysis paragraph is where you evaluate the source. Avoid summary statements like, "This source is reliable," or "I believe it because the authors have doctorates." Instead, think about how they describe the limitations of their work. Did the findings answer the research question emphatically, or did the findings fail to support the hypothesis? This paragraph should be relatively short. It may only be about 2 sentences long. The application paragraph answers the question, if I were studying the same thing as you, why would I need to read this article? What's so valuable here? This is good for the researcher who is annotating hundreds of articles for a project. They may not be able to remember why they kept this source, but in your case, this is about a problem that requires an integrated solution. How will this source fit into your larger problem? In what ways do you imagine that it might be useful? I have provided a checklist of questions that you should think about answering as you annotate these sources. Not all of the questions will be relevant all of the time. Also, students who are reading scholarly sources for the first time will often find that they are so full of jargon, terms of research that are unfamiliar, and very difficult to read. That's why I'm only asking you to annotate 6 sources. It will take time to read them carefully. You may not understand what Bayesian neural network models are, but look it up and see if you can learn even just a little bit. The point of these annotations is not to perform an annotation, but to practice the skill of reading a source carefully and listen to the ways that nerds talk to one another about the cells that make up the animal you want to understand better. For this assignment, you will need to choose 3 articles that come from each of your own INTG disciplines. The articles should contribute to your understanding of the problem and must be from scholarly journals. This means that you may not use the first 6 that you read. You may need to hunt a little for the articles that best fit your question.